Hookup culture is everywhere these days, from college campuses to online dating apps. It seems like our entire civilization is built on having as many meaningless, casual relationships as possible. Now, in this video, I basically just want to be really honest and explain why I believe that engaging in this is extremely detrimental to your mental health. I have to be extremely honest. I'm no exception to the rule. I've definitely engaged in a lot of, casual relationships, even to my own detriment. Now, I'm almost in my mid-30s and I realized how I basically wasted my entire 20s to chasing women. I was never really the person to engage in, activities such as drugs and alcohol. Actually, I never touched it. Drugs, alcohol, cigarettes never really was my go-to escape. But the one place that I really would get my dopamine hit from was getting as many women as possible, getting laid as much as possible. Now, we live in a society that keeps telling us that it's different when men do it than versus when women do it. And there is a degree of truth to that. However, to just think and assume that as a guy, you can have as many women as possible and get lost in this endless cycle of casual sex, so to say, without having it any negative consequences on your mental health and on your well-being, you're sadly mistaken. Now, the reason why sleeping around as a guy is different for us men is because it goes at the expense of the things that we're supposed to be working on, right? For every second that you're wasting on distraction is a second that you're not investing into your growth. And as a man, we all know that our entire existence evolves around purpose, as cliche as it sounds, as tried as it may sound, right? And so I feel comfortable saying that most men today are addicted to both ejaculation and validation until they're slave of both and master of none, right? And so if you're watching me right now and you have to be really honest and you look at how you have been engaging in porn, for example, or just trying to convince women to go on a date with you, or just swiping endlessly on one of the dating apps, and maybe it was Tinder, maybe it was Bumble, maybe it was Hinge, then you know how much of a loser you've been feeling that every time that you ejaculated right after watching porn, like there is this feeling of shame that we rarely talk about. And so it has been proven scientifically that engaging in these activities and going after these casual hookups have extremely detrimental side effects, especially in the long run. And the entire reasoning, the way I view this, is that we're constantly giving into the short-term gratification instead of just thinking long-term. And if you really think about it, there isn't a decision in which the short-term wins from the long-term thinking. Every big decision that really dictates your life has to come from a place of long-term thinking. And so by engaging in these casual, meaningless activities, you're automatically keeping the person that you're supposed to be with away from you. And it's very powerful if you think about it that way. Like it's been hitting me so hard lately. Like by the way, like I'm still learning this myself. I'm still kind of like rewiring my brain, even though I'm more aware of it. I'm journaling, I'm engaging in more healthy activities, I'm working out more, but everybody is wired in a certain way. And so if you start doing the inner work, you understand more why you need what you need, why you're going after whatever it is you're chasing. And so for me, having done the inner work and still doing the inner work, still figuring out what triggers me, what wires me, what makes me tick, I realized that for a large degree, for a very long time, it was definitely validation, because I never really had someone to validate me. And so if there's one thing that most of us men actually desire more than even, just ejaculation, it's the validation. It's the intimacy that comes with having a partner laying next to you when you go to bed. And so understand that you have to look for ways to rewire yourself, really, to think that, oh, I'm a man, I can sleep with many women as possible. No, dude, like you can't. Like it's absolutely going to ruin you. And even though you may not see it right now because you're feeling like all these pleasurable feelings and it's fun and it's cool and it's nice, over the long haul, in the long run, you will see that it's actually going to have a very detrimental impact if you're not being careful. And so I've been thinking more about the idea of God. I've been thinking more about the concept of religion. I've been thinking about how I have been deteriorating from most of my 20s and, just going in directions I shouldn't have gone to, just to be in my 30s right now and go all the way back to figure out that, hey, the people that were warning me from this, my parents, my uncles, etc., were actually right. And so I don't think it's ever too late to change. However, I do believe that you can save yourself a lot of time by changing early or putting yourself in a place where you don't have to change at all when it comes to a different subject. And the way I see it is like you're walking into a direction, and the further you walk, the further the road is that you have to walk back once you decide to change, right? And so if you watch porn once, so the distance from that one time doing it to never ever doing it again is very small. It doesn't take a lot of effort. But if you've been, jerking off for, let's say, almost a decade, and you've been just hooked to your screen and having your pants down your knees and your brain just being numbed out by all these degenerate things that are online, then obviously that distance is going to be much longer. And so it takes much more effort and much more discipline to change your ways, especially if you want it to be like a lasting change. It's definitely the case that the side effects for men are slightly different than for women. There is this thing called pair bonding, right? Which determines your ability to build a very deep, meaningful connection with the opposite sex. And so it has been proven scientifically that if you're a woman in particular, that ability to pair bond becomes exponentially more difficult after a very, very low number of sexual partners. I think the number was around 3. So if a woman has slept with more than 3 guys, and if we're being really honest, that is most women today over the age of 18. Hell, I saw a video not too long ago about a girl of 16 who was bragging that she already slept with 9 dudes. Like, that blowed my mind, but it is the reality that we're living in right now. And so it is true that for women that number tends to be much lower, but that doesn't mean that as a guy you can just endlessly screw around without having any consequences to it, right? Your ability as a man to build a family, to be really connected to one person, to be more purpose orientated instead of impulse orientated, becomes much more difficult once you've engaged too long in any activity. Again, whether that is drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, but also just hooking up with a bunch of different people. And so especially if you're like me and you want to grow and you want to become better and you want to become more aware of the imperfect behaviors, the degenerate behaviors, let's just call it as it is, it's degenerate behaviors that you've been engaging in, then you know that it's not good. Like, you know it. Sometimes you just know, right? Sometimes things don't need to be explained because intuitively we're smart enough to understand that once we do certain things, the consequences aren't going to be that positive. We feel it. And for a man, I think one of the worst feelings is the feeling of not being good enough and the feeling of shame and the feeling of guilt. And that is exactly what we get from engaging in these activities, whether we would like to admit it or not, right? And so I do feel like there has been a positive spin to the manosphere right now, especially in the past year, especially with the upcoming of Andrew Tate and everything. The conversation of masculinity has been put on the table again. However, I think it's extremely dangerous to just assume that having fancy cars, having a lot of money and an endless pool of women is what it means to be a man, because it isn't. Masculinity always boils down to your ability to carry responsibility, to be disciplined, and to be grounded and to be stoic, and not to act upon impulse. And again, the reason why I'm making this video is not to teach you a lesson. The reason why I make this video is to also look into the camera and speak to myself, because I need to learn these lessons as well. I'm growing, I'm evolving, I'm with you in this journey, right? And so for me, I'm learning to hold myself more accountable, whether that is through a journal or just being brutally honest and saying in the camera, look, I'm telling you that this is not good, but even though that I'm telling it, I'm still engaging in it as well. Even though it's to a much smaller degree, I'm still not married, right? I'm still single, I'm still not married, I still don't have a wife and kids, but these are all things that I'm definitely aspiring. So I'm trying to cut loose of the ties that are holding me back from becoming that man and just attracting what I want to attract in my life, and I encourage you to do the same. So this was like a totally unscripted video. Usually, I have at least some bullet points, but this time I just pressed the play button because I just felt like I needed to get this off my chest. I feel like this is an extremely important subject that we need to speak upon today much more than ever before. And so if you're a guy watching me right now, but also if you're a woman, I hope you can gain something out of it, because there is no empowerment in just having a bunch of men that want to sleep with you. It's cheap, it's degenerate. And so if you got any value out of this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, because I really want to grow this channel of like-minded individuals. I just want to shed my light on these topics, and I feel like we need it more than ever before, right? And I do feel like there has been a positive spin, but we still have a very long way to go. So anything that you can do to support this, whether it's the podcast on Spotify or Apple, on Instagram, or just here on YouTube, just to like and subscribe, it would mean the world to me. So thank you so much. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy. Let's get it.